Greetings, Hempster. Thank you for tuning in to another Hemp episode of HempAware Radio, where we focus on what's most important. Today's show is all about how to accelerate the growth and memorability of your hemp company with strategic marketing and design so that you can attract your ideal customers and get them to come back for more. And to help me do that today, I have a special guest, Will Reed. He's the CEO and founder at cannaplanners.com. And the Cannaplanners team is made up of expert web designers, developers, marketers, and creative minds that can help your canna business create a powerful brand based on a story, imagery, and strong digital presence. The goal at Cannaplanners is to help new brands like yours make an impact in the fast-growing hemp and cannabis industry. And they have an incredible team to help you find the most impactful solution for your business. What I love about Cannaplanners is that just like we're doing here at HempAware, they're dedicated and committed to breaking down the stigma around cannabis while building up the professionalism of this industry through their work. And it's been far too long since cannabis was known for what it really is, an essential solution for food, home, clothing, plastics, fuel, medicine, and so much more. So if you're ready to take your hemp company or cannabis business to the next level, you're going to love this hemp episode today. And so without further ado, I'd love to welcome aboard Will Reed, the CEO and founder at Cannaplanners, to the HempAware Radio
Hello.
Show. Thanks so much for joining me, Will.
Hey, Tyler. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate you.
Yeah. So give us a little bit of background about your expertise and, how you were ultimately introduced to cannabis and what inspired you to create Cannaplanners.
All of those things in no particular order. Well, I'm kind of a lifelong cannabis lover, appreciator, user, consumer. I would say for most all of my adult life and some of my adolescent life, I found comfort in cannabis, and it was specifically at the time beyond being fun. It was a really good kind. I'm part of that overprescribed Ritalin generation, ADHD generation of people overprescribed to prescription amphetamines. So at the time, cannabis was a really great kind of opposite side of that spectrum of being kind of cracked out all day and then not being cracked out all day. So I've always had, an affinity for cannabis for sure. And I've always appreciated it, even when it didn't seem so clear that there was any future in it. You know what I mean? So to answer another part of your question, so I come from Apple. My professional life started at Apple. So I drank that Kool-Aid pretty readily about things like customer experience and, the importance of brand and kind of the power of brand. So when I was, after my time at Apple, moving to Vermont, which is where I live, where I started Cannaplanners, I thought that I kind of saw the future. It was kind of happening around us with cannabis legalization happening everywhere else. This is back in 2013. I started kind of thinking about this. But the writing was pretty much on the wall. So I started figuring out how I could, my skills are really in sales. I've always been in sales. Prior to starting Cannaplanners, I'd not really been, I'm using air quotes for your listeners, I'd not really been a real entrepreneur. I hadn't really, and that's not even to say that I tried stuff and failed. I hadn't even really tried stuff at that point. So figuring out kind of where I wanted to be, I was working at a 9-to-5 job. I kind of hated it. I don't feel like I was a good employee at the time. And I saw the writing, like I said, I saw the writing on the wall. So I was and at the time I was working in web sales. So I was doing kind of what we do here. And I had a knack for it. I kind of figured out that pitch. So it was sort of obvious to me that this would be an important skill to have in cannabis. If not now, like people would be marketing cannabis soon. So I tried to start Cannaplanners. Yeah, I started. And luckily at that point, just to like bring it to your audience, like at that point, Vermont was a little bit ahead of the Farm Bill, right? So we had people planting hemp in Vermont a little bit, not before everybody, but before most other states. So like around the time Oregon was doing it, and I know Kentucky was heavily involved in it, we were there. So there were all these opportunities for me to kind of validate the business idea as it pertained to the emerging CBD market.
For sure.
So we tried that, and we grew. Yeah, we started as a website company, and websites are still a huge part of what we do. But and we'll get into the normalization side of it. But our mission, my mission coming into this, was to try to extricate myself from other marketing kind of avenues other people had been taking, which seemed really exploitative of the plant. It seemed tacky. It didn't seem like a broad consumer marketing tactic. It was really specific, and I was pretty keenly aware, and I still hope this is the case, that there's a whole population of potential cannabis CBD consumer who is uneducated, frightened, whatever in an illegal state. That could be a primary one, but there are all these things that were kind of holding back, and again, beyond legality, there were all these factors interpersonally that were holding consumers back from maybe trying these products out. So I knew that there was a responsibility to manufacturers and also the creative people like Cannaplanners who are getting into this game to break that, right? And, push normalization in the way that we knew we could successfully do that.
So you saw the challenge of the marketing challenge, that there was a sort of low end or one approach to marketing cannabis, and a lot of lack of education or lack of consumer education. So you felt like marketing, branding in particular, helping other companies look more professional could really help get rid of the stigma around hemp. And so you're using this as your vehicle.
Absolutely. I mean, we had some pretty arrogant design rules in the beginning. We weren't going to allow ourselves to use leaves in design motifs. We weren't going to allow ourselves to use that green. Like if you close your eyes and say cannabis industry and you think of the green that everybody uses or used to use, we weren't going to use that. We had to, we were just trying to be, we were a little, like I said, arrogant in our approach, but I think what we were trying to do was just set a bar. Now, we couldn't, stay true to those rules, hardly ever. You'll see pot leaves and various colors of green all over the place in everything we do, or not everything, but in a lot of things we do. It's up to us to kind of have a brand standard for Cannaplanners in regards to the kind of work we want to do.
Yeah, and it really comes down to
build something that's lasting.
Exactly. Yeah, and being flexible with your design principles, because I've gone through that very thing with my clients, is using the hemp leaf. It has a stigma, or the cannabis leaf, and so it really comes down to your target audience. What is the product you're designing? Yes. And is it appropriate to use the leaf or not just this blanket rule that you shouldn't use it. So that totally makes sense.
Of course.
But going into more other, our listeners are mostly hemp entrepreneurs, or they're starting a brand or a new product. So for the hemp entrepreneurs that are just getting started with their product or service, who do you know, or I guess my question is, what would you recommend them to focus on first when it comes to creating a brand or a product in the market? And, how would you recommend they get started? Like, what's more important, creating the product or designing a brand around the customer and then matching up a product to their needs? Or what's your take on that?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a chicken or the egg, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Do I create the product and hope that it's a really awesome product, or do I focus on the brand and make sure the brand is powerful enough that no matter what the product is, people will align with the brand? Well, I would say I will give you a probably unsatisfying, ambiguous answer, which is it depends on the business and entrepreneur. There are entrepreneurs who will go in and buy fledgling, failing, maybe even successful, existing businesses and have to evolve that product line and that brand and all that stuff, and that will dictate kind of what they view as important. To me, I mean, I'm gonna sound like a hippie here, if you'll allow me, but to me, it was all about creating a life, really, a little bit of world building. Like, how do I live a life I'm proud of? How do I live a life that, will help facilitate, fill in the blank, whatever it is kind of life you want to live, and then kind of back in from there, right? It's not in my podcast, I'll do a shameless plug here if you'll allow, Common Sense Mia, entrepreneurs I have interviewed in the past have consistently said it's not about what you love at all. It's about what you're good at, and then if you're lucky, you can apply what you love. And I'm lucky because that's exactly what I did. So I was good at sales. I was good at kind of managing a team and a workflow, and I was lucky enough to apply it to cannabis, which I love. So I would say, for actual people manufactured product goods, both of those things are important. Both of those things are super important. You have to have a product that doesn't suck, and you have to have a product that aligns with the consumer you're hoping to whose attention you're trying to grab. So that's the real question, is who is your consumer? And this is something that baffles my clients often because they don't always think about this. If we apply, just the normal kinds of answers I get when we ask this question, it's who is your customer? And oftentimes people will say anybody who smokes weed or anybody who uses CBD, and that's just not the case. Mm-hmm. So you have to, in developing your product, this is important, but in developing your brand, it's even more important to understand who you're trying to sell to.
Yeah, your minimum viable audience, as Seth Godin calls it. It's really,
yes.
It comes down to the expression, if you try to market or sell to everyone, you end up selling to no one. And
exactly.
So I completely agree. The importance of niching down, you really can't niche too far down. And people think,
you can't niche too far down.
Yeah.
And if you do it successfully, sorry to interrupt you, Tyler, but if you do it successfully, then you actually can get what you originally set out for. If you can niche yourself down to a specific audience, and that audience and that product captures that audience without alienating the other ones, you have a better chance of attracting people outside of that original customer base. And for what it's worth, this thing changes every year you grow. This changes. So every year, every 2 years, you should be kind of thinking about, okay, who did I sell to this year? How are they different from the people the year before?
Mm-hmm.
Was that why did that happen? Was that a result of messaging or creative, or what was it? What was in the water that year?
Yeah, and any powerful copywriting framework is going to speak to the needs of the customer. So it's foundational to know your customer, but then what are they struggling with? What are their problems and challenges, and how does your product help overcome those challenges? And without knowing your customer, you can't answer those questions, and therefore you can't create copy that converts and actually gets you sales. So I completely agree. It's totally foundational. Of course, you have to have a product that's good and believe in it. And once you have a good product that you believe in, then dialing in your market is I think, second runner up to that. But every
and for what it's worth, Well, just I was going to say for your listeners, like, this is not an easy question to answer. Like, this is not an easy question to answer. It's super introspective. It's a heady way to think about your company. And I don't mean that in the cannabis definition of heady. I mean, like, you are actually putting a lot of brain power into considering who you're trying to talk to. And then you have to understand how to talk to them, because it may not even be like you. You know what I mean? Like, my customers aren't me. You know what I mean? So I'm not speaking to them the way I would speak to myself or someone like me or really my peers. It's a totally different, you know, type of language, and it's for me, it's far more educational than really anything, and that's not always the case for businesses. But
you have to realize in your verbiage, your emails, your social media, every aspect of your communication, you might not be your end customer. And so knowing how they speak and the language, the words they use, where they shop, like, these things are super crucial to really speak to them. So I agree with that. That is an important distinction. Some of the other mistakes or maybe challenges that hemp companies make when first starting out, you know, when it comes to their branding or creating products, what are some of the mistakes that you maybe experienced and were able to overcome, and how were you able to overcome them?
Well, the experiences I have as a digital agency are for sure far different than the challenges my clients face. We're not we are professionally not a plant touching company. We are very unprofessionally plant touching, but we are not tied to the same kinds of regulations that cannabis and even CBD companies are. So for me, the challenges are creating a company culture that I can be proud of, that people want to come work for. Like, this is something I don't know how to do, and I never, you know what I mean? Like, no one ever teaches you how to create a culture. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but these things are important in developing your brand. Like, in the beginning, you're probably not thinking about that, but this is the next evolution of the brand Cannaplanners, because now we're busy. We're and again, I'm using air quotes, listeners. We're a real company now. You know what I mean? Like, we have 13 employees and health insurance and payroll and all that stuff. So there's aspects to growing the brand that go beyond like cool design work.
Yeah.
And those are the things that I'm dealing with right now. I would say for people listening, starting a CBD brand. Let's see.
Or what would you say some of the biggest mistakes they make? They set out to create a brand. Maybe they don't understand design principles or branding principles. What would you say are some of the most common mistakes that brands make?
Totally. Well, they're not. A lot of them aren't thinking about that, and this isn't to. This is maybe an older view, but back in the day, a couple years ago, which is like 1,000 years in the cannabis years, but when I first started Cannaplanners, companies really weren't thinking about this at all. They were printing, labels at home on a Avery label, that they got from Staples, and they weren't thinking about this. They were really true believers in the power of, and I bet a lot of your listeners align with this, true believers in the power of cannabis. And really, we're just hoping that the product alone would be good enough. It's not. It never is. Oh, something just fell somewhere. It's not, and it never is. And you shouldn't think about this, because you're just doing yourself and your company a disservice, which is setting yourself back a lot. So without sounding, again, arrogant, here's a mistake I see all the time, which is a customer will go through our sales process at Cannaplanners, and this doesn't always happen, but it happens frequently enough. They'll go through the sales process at Cannaplanners. We'll talk through the value of building a brand. We'll talk to them about simple things like the value of having a website, and not so simple things like how we can do advertising, or how we can, what can we get out of SEO? How does that translate to foot traffic in your dispensary or whatever? All these things, and then they get scared when they get the contract, you know what I mean? And they back out and they say, oh, we're just going to handle this inside. My neighbor's a designer. My neighbor's kid is a a kid and probably knows SEO. You know, whatever it is, like, we're going to take this in-house. So many times they'll come back because they haven't, it doesn't, that never works. And not only does it not work, their competitors didn't do that and maybe even hired canna planners or a company like ours to do these things. And now they're feeling that in their bank accounts. You know what I mean? They're feeling that competition right off the bat. So they're not thinking about this, even though they have a great CBD product. Well, so does their competitor. It's the same thing, and it's the same ratio, but they took the time to market it and find an audience and not just put, a crappy label on a bottle.
Right. So you think not understanding design principles and quality of design is a big mistake that new hemp companies make?
I'm saying that there's a characteristic of altruism that is not uncommon in entrepreneurs in the cannabis space. And you have to get rid of that mentality right now. Right now. Your products are great and they do great things, but your job isn't to sit up on the mountaintop and convert people to cannabis. It's to I mean, it kind of is, but I'm saying, like, not in an altruistic way. The power of this plant is mostly a secret. And people aren't going to believe you the same way that they don't believe, people talking about, whatever, essential oils or whatever, you know what I mean? Like,
sure.
There is that sort of wall that still needs to be broken down.
I agree. So in terms of design and, how it fits into the whole marketing equation, why would you say, branding and design is essential to any sort of marketing plan?
Because all your competitors are doing it. So there's something that we call, and maybe this is an industry-wide term for agencies, I don't know, but we call it just being retail ready. If I'm a stranger walking in off the street to a grocery store, which this happens, by the way, all the time. Buyers are approached by producers all the time on the floor, and they'll say, here's my product, here's why it's great, here's where it'll fit on your shelf, and whatever. And if you have to make it as easy for that person to say yes, because they're getting, 100 of those, they're having 100 of those conversations a week sometimes. Yeah. So you have to make it as simple as possible to say yes. And if your product looks like crap, and all you have to do is go into a retail store and just look. All you have to do is just look around. Is your product going to stand out on that shelf? And it doesn't matter what kind of, you can go to the grocery store, you can go to a dispensary, you can go to a CBD shop, whatever, a car, whatever. Does that product stand out? Or does it look like, cheap? Are you making yourself cheaper by not taking that into account? So
exactly.
Put yourself really in the shoes of the buyer that the store you want to be in. If you're not going in there with something that has a barcode on it, that has a great label, that's easy to read, and a sales sheet, and here's everything you need just to put, all that stuff, it's just going to make it so much easier for that buyer to say no, because they have a job to do, and, they want that job to be easily done.
Exactly. And you're not just competing with other brands in your niche. You're also competing with every other company that's trying to sell a product and try to get your attention. I mean, like you said, maybe you're selling a CBD tincture, but someone could easily turn around and buy the Advil on the other shelf. It's not just CBD that you're competing with. So really being memorable, standing out, doing something to really catch people's attention, but then to really deliver on that. Once you get their attention, make sure that your message is clear. What are they going to get out of buying it? Who are they going to become by purchasing your product? I think is totally essential. So
totally,
I appreciate that.
Totally. And again, these are hard concepts. Like, they sound simple, but they're really hard concepts to grasp if you're doing it by yourself. Which anybody listening, starting a company, is exactly what they're doing. They're bootstrapping all of this. A huge entrepreneurial skill, and one that I learned painfully early on, is to know your limits and know where to call in for backup when you need to. So if it's not design, if you're like me and you can't even write your name legibly with a crayon, then you call a designer. If you don't know how to talk about your product, well, how is anybody going to know about your product?
Mm-hmm.
So figure out what you're good at and more. Figure out what you're not good at and make sure those things get done well. Because if you start paying for those things, and this is just the transfer of energy, right? Like if you're paying for a service, right, like, creative, you're going to take it that much more seriously as opposed to just saying, oh, I can do this, right? Like there will be a much greater emotional connection to the brand you're building if you actually sacrifice something for it. And the simplest thing to sacrifice is a couple bucks.
Yeah. And of course, there are those out there that maybe are trying to bootstrap and do things on their own. And so for those out there that maybe are bootstrapping and don't have a huge amount or even a small amount to invest, what would you say is the number one thing that they focus on, whether it's, their branding or their marketing? Let's just say they have a really good quality product. Yeah.
Yep. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Like, you have to figure out what to bootstrap. And in my case, in the beginning, it was accounting. Like, I can barely even turn on a calculator. Never. And this is a terrible trait for a CEO to have, right? But I knew this was going to be one that was going to just generate more problems for me and cost me more money. So as opposed to really trying to get past the emotional aspect of paying somebody to do a thing for me, it doesn't matter how much it costs. I know I'm going to pay more if I don't do it right the first time. So
exactly.
I don't know if that actually answers your question, but like to your point, it's like, well, if you're not going to have to bootstrap everything. Some things you're good at, some things you'll hire other people out to do, so figure out what it is you're not good at. And maybe you are good at creative,
right.
In which case just go to the store and look how great brands are laying out their labels and packages and copy it.
Liberally borrow. Yeah,
exactly. Like that real estate that you have on a label, it's teeny tiny. So you have to figure out what's important.
So in terms of, some of the most cost-effective or because what I'm finding, I've been in the hemp industry over 18 years, and just in the last, I would say 3 to 5 years, we're finally seeing big money get into hemp. Like prior to that, it was only hemp fabric and hemp T-shirts and some, hemp twine, and then the whole CBD craze came online, and then that's when the money started flowing in. But there's still, mom and pop shops out there, like, a mom who wants to do a hemp diaper brand, or companies that are doing animal bedding, or, there's non-CBD companies that have not as much money. What would you recommend that are some of the most cost-effective ways to drive traffic, leads, and sales for these up-and-coming businesses?
Yeah, get out there. Get out there and ask all of your retailers, what days can I demo in the store? Go to every farmer's market you can. Like literally, those are the things. If you're not going to pay to, if the goal is to do this as organically as possible, then get your asses out there and start doing demo days, because that is really effective. Go to trade shows if you can. The best way to get in front of people is by getting in front of people. So, and that's actually a big theme for us this year, coming out of the COVID years and, having this, sad nostalgia about how great the days before COVID were, when we could get on planes and go to meet clients in person and go to farms and go to grows or whatever. Those days are back. So we're going to really embrace those things, and we're going to travel a lot more this year, and we're going to twice as many trade shows. And, so that's our goal. Is there's plenty of organic ways, and most of them are just getting out there. Network.
I love it. So just physically talking to people, whether it's getting on a phone call, going to live events, going to the retail stores you maybe are currently selling in to do demos and things to just get yourself in front of people.
If you're listening to hemp radio, call up and get on this show, figure out, and I mean that sincerely, put yourself in uncomfortable positions is what I'm really saying. And like, for me, that's because I'm mostly an introvert. It's doing extrovert things. So traveling, being, speaking, being a guest on podcasts, like whatever it is where I can get on my soapbox and tell people how great CannaPlanners is and spread, it works. Mm-hmm. It definitely works.
For sure.
Yeah. We made, I think this year so we have a outbound sales strategy, right? Mm-hmm. Basically cold calling. And I think probably this year we probably made 50,000 dials, mm-hmm. at least, maybe more, maybe like 70 or so. Wow. Right. So 70,000 phone calls we made to existing cannabis companies, and mm-hmm. none of it is as valuable as going to BizCon or like going mm-hmm. to a New England cannabis convention or doing a podcast. Like none of it is, or just word of mouth. Like we do so much better with our clients. Gaining new sales by just doing well at what we do, being authentic, and mm-hmm. giving good customer service. Like that's what we're all about.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So to kind of shift into more of the higher end paid methods of getting traffic and sales. I mean, obviously I would say as a foundation, any company, any brand should be focused on the more cost-effective free methods of marketing, word of mouth and going to live events, which may cost money, but still there's major regulations and limitations
social capital,
when it comes to paid ads. What have you found are ways to get traffic? If someone does want to do a paid ads campaign, are there certain platforms you found that are more friendly to hemp, or do you find your brands do more like sponsorship things where they're going to get put in front of people because they're on some sort of banner at a live show, or what is your experience in that?
How about an exclusive? You want an exclusive? We haven't even mm-hmm. talked about this yet publicly, so mm-hmm. I'll talk to you about it first. So cool. Everybody knows that social media basically wants nothing to do with us. Google wants nothing to do with us in terms mm-hmm. of their paid strategies. So we found, and this is specifically with Google ads, we don't touch social at all. It's not important to us.
Mm-hmm. But when you say social, just to clarify, do you mean social ads or social media marketing in general?
Both of it. Like there's a layer of thin ice that separates cannabis social media accounts from existence and non-existence, right? So mm-hmm. for me, the advice, just kind of the way we talk about social is it's just one of the spokes of the wheel. And unfortunately, we can't exploit it the same way other people, other legal non-cannabis companies can, right? Mm-hmm. So we can't do any of the paid stuff. And, the results of it are just outweigh the risks of it, right? Like mm-hmm. the risks are just not that great. We don't want clients getting their social accounts shut down. Yeah. So we just say post pictures, just like have it be something that shows off the brand. Remember like what social media used to be, like when it first started, mm-hmm. Like that's how we say to use it. Use it like the old fashioned way, just showing, a window into your life.
Yeah.
But just let them know we have found ways. Yeah, exactly. Like, post a pretty picture. But we have found ways to run success. We've been running success. We've been beta testing this the last, 8 or 9 months probably. And we've been successfully running lots and lots and lots of Google ad campaigns for not only a couple CBD brands, but cannabis retailers. So dispensaries, we've been able to do it. And it's not through anything too groundbreaking. We're focused on the educational side of it. It is a bit of a higher investment compared to normal Google ads because it requires a few other things that you normally wouldn't have to do. But it's an exciting thing that we're getting into this year.
Nice. Okay.
Crushing out.
There
Google
are
ads.
other, right? Yeah, and there's some other ad networks I've heard of, like Taboola and there's another one, Brain something, but they're basically, I've heard 86% of all like traffic goes to Google, first.
Yep.
And then, Google and Facebook, like majority of any sort of paid ad networks is through Google and Facebook. And then, the other 10% is Amazon paid ads. And so it is, really challenging. I'm excited to learn more about what you guys are coming up with next year because paid ads, it's nice to just turn on the nozzle and let the traffic flow. And with organic methods like SEO and social, it can fluctuate quite a bit when it comes to traffic. So it's nice to get that steady flow.
Here's a good example of that, which is email marketing. We introduced email marketing at the beginning of 2022. Basically, this is how we kind of roll out things. We'll test for a whole year to make sure it's a viable, marketing service for our clients, but that it also makes good business sense for us. And email marketing, like if you're a CBD retailer and you have an online store, get a Klaviyo account, set up the automations, just the welcome campaigns and lost cart and abandoned cart and all those things are just automations that you can set up for basically free. That will make you money. They will make you tons of money. So we have made our clients tons of cash just from abandoned cart stuff, just setting up the automations. And then, they see the value in that and they hire us to do email marketing for them. So there's huge ROI in email marketing because unlike social, you can say whatever you want. You own those email lists and, email clients aren't getting shut down by their platforms.
Exactly.
It just is. So you can say what you want. You don't have to use coded language like you would on Facebook or Instagram or whatever.
Right.
You can use real pictures. You can use you can say whatever you want.
Exactly.
And people respond to it. So
I totally agree.
It's something you can do. Yeah, it's something you can do for free until you can't.
Yeah, and that there's a statistic out there. Don't quote me on this, but it's something like for every email address you have on your active list, of course you have to email people for this to be accurate, but it's something like $30 per, like each subscriber you have is worth like $30 a month or something. So if you're not emailing, you can't make money with email marketing. So I completely agree. And people don't want to be bombarded with stupid stuff. So it's important to provide value, but it is okay to sell too. Because when people sign up for your list or when they're on your website trying to shop for something, then most of the time, if you like a brand, you like getting their emails. And if it's irrelevant or it's not applicable to you, they're just going to delete it and send them another one. And, like you said, setting up these automations is essential. Even like cleaning your list, making sure you have a sunset sort of flow so that for the people that aren't opening your emails, don't damage your open rates. You can kind of clean them out. And it's important. Some people think, I just need to build my list, but you also need to clean your list, which I think is a crucial thing on that point.
Definitely.
But
we've seen a lot of success with email this year for our clients, and it's been, such an awesome, and that's literally how our sales pitch is literally what I just said. It's not social, and you can say whatever you want. And if you're doing it consistently, you're doing it professionally, it's going to make you money, like real money too.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's crucial. Email marketing is not dead, as many people might think.
No, it's definitely not dead. And, I'm banking the entire company on some of these marketing dinosaurs, right? Like we started, we're a website company, it doesn't get much more archaic than building a website for your company. And then the first marketing service we offered was SEO. And in past agencies I worked for, they stopped selling SEO because, they moved to paid ads or social or whatever, and they just didn't do this. But this is where the real value lies in building one's brand. It's like these old things. And the reason they work is because they work and we have to use them because cannabis. So
absolutely.
We crush it with SEO. We create, I think we probably wrote 120,000 blog posts this past year, something like that.
What?
Something ridiculous. It's like
That's
huge,
incredible.
yeah, I mean, it's a lot.
Wow. Well, on that note, where can people learn more about your services and get a hold of you, or set up a discovery call or something like that? Tell us how to find you.
Yeah, I'd love to chat with your listeners. So you can find us, of course, on the internet. It's cannaplanners.com. That's CANNAPLANNERS.com, cannaplanners.com. And then we're on all the socials. It's at Cannaplanners for all of them except for Facebook, which is at 420web for some reason. Someone had Cannaplanners somehow. So yeah, you can find us there. Also, just so you guys know, if for cannabis entrepreneurs, the best social network there is LinkedIn. I do, I'm active on LinkedIn. LinkedIn does not care as far as it seems. They do not care about cannabis at all as a kind of stigma sort of industry. So,
cool.
Get on LinkedIn, network there. But yeah, that's
awesome. Well, one of the things I love, I'm a wordsmith, and I love inventing words. We have a whole hempsicon on our website. It's a hemp lexicon of all the different words we've coined or people have coined, and we kind of collect the different hemp words. But I love the conjugation canna planners, because one of the things I learned at a very young age is if you want to change the planet, what must you do? Plan it. So without a plan, you end up like a boat in the water without a rudder. It's like that plan puts the rudder in the water and helps you at least have some direction on where you're going. And so I love that play on words that you guys are doing. It's crucial to having a clear plan so that not only you know where you're going, but your team knows where you're going, and you can all agree to be on the same page and head in the same direction. So, but on that note, I would love to ask you one last question. If you had a chance to speak with all the hemp entrepreneurs in the world and share one bit of advice with them, what would that be?
Wow. Well, I mentioned it once, and he's not a hemp entrepreneur, but he is so Tito Byrne, so like I said, my company is located in Vermont. We're in Burlington. Tito Byrne is a local glass shop owner. He's been in town for, 25 years in his shop, and he's just about to open. Vermont went rec. I think we opened up October 1st or something like that. So shops are just starting to slowly open up now. He's opening his. And what I said earlier in the show about, do what you're good at, not what you love, was something he said to me in a podcast of mine. By the way, that podcast is called Common Sensimia, and you can find it on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. But he said that to me in an interview, and I never, you always hear, do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And, I think I kind of always took that for granted. And no one had ever put it to me in the way that he did. So I would echo the words of Tito Byrne, which is, don't do what you love, do what you're good at. Do what you're good at.
I love that. Yeah, it's really I think a spiritual journey too, because when you get really good at something, it really allows you to. It's ironic, but like when you focus in on one thing, that one thing ends up connecting you to everything else. And so it's like mastering one thing can really open up doors into something that you do love. But I love that advice. Focus on not what you love, but focus on what you're good at and get really good at it, because you can really find joy in that. If you'll allow me,
Tyler, let me take it one step further. I think that's a beautiful sentiment. If you'll allow me, let me take it one step further. It's not only is it spiritual, it's primal. Like that's the thing that I figured out immediately. I got fired from my job and had to start Cannaplanners like literally that day because of the primal fear of not being able to survive and not being able to pay my rent, take care of my wife or my dogs or whatever. Like that primal need to survive, combined with just a insatiable and sense of ambition, you'll be fine.
I love it. That's super awesome. You've been really helpful, insightful, and look forward to working with you into the future, Will. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into another Hemp episode of HempAware Radio. This is Will Reed with cannaplanners.com, and this is your Hemptrepreneurial host, Tyler Hemp, here to HempAware your Hemposphere as usual. We'll see you all in the next Hempisode. Thanks again, Will.
Thank you.
Peace out, everyone.